Hello, welcome to the Database Decision Making Rollout webinar. I'm Bev Kazadi, and I'm here with Dr. Sarah Martin. We hope to provide you with an understanding of this new professional learning module. We're going to take a look at the key content, structure, and sequence of this module. This module, along with presenter materials, can be found on the MoEducel site, and there is the link. Here are the outcomes, the intended outcomes for this rollout webinar. This approach to DBDM promotes a systematic process that uses data to drive instruction. We're going to develop an understanding of how the training is organized, and then we're going to become familiar with the four essential functions and components of the gains process. We're going to be introduced to some key concepts guiding the design of this professional learning module. Here are some key features of the DBDM module. All the components are aligned. They're all aligned around the practice profile. The components include the PowerPoint, the DBDM workbook that works very closely with the PowerPoint. There will also be a coaching companion with materials to enhance the original materials, and also a self-assessment practice profile. The essential functions on the practice profile are directly aligned with the gain step. The content in this module provides a core framework for the DBM process, and the videos selected promote a deeper understanding of the key concepts. We have activities that will help engage educators in reflection, practice, and application during the training. Here are some key tips and takeaways. The suggested time frame for this module is between 2 to 3 hours when just using the core material. There is about 15 minutes of informational slides that explain each of the essential functions, and then an activity that follows that will last between 20 and 30 minutes. The notes are really essential, so make certain that they are read thoroughly for a clear understanding of both the content and the activities. This module is flexible. You can add your own visuals and additional reflection activities as you feel necessary. You can also begin the module at different places to help personalize it. This rollout video will help provide clarification on the PowerPoint structure and the key points of the content. The entire training session, though, isn't intended to be presented at this time. Next we're going to have Sarah explain the hidden slides. There's a lot of important information on those.
Hi, I'm Sarah Martin. Thanks, Bev, for the introduction. So hidden slide number 1. The most important part about this slide is the notes section. So in the notes, you'll find really important information about the in-person training. You'll get information about how the presenter notes are organized, and you'll get some information about the content fidelity checklist. Hidden slide number 2 explains the supplies that you need for the training. You'll need Wi-Fi access to the videos, chart paper, markers, and Post-it notes. The most important thing about the supplies is to make sure that you have Wi-Fi access for both the presenter and the participants. If you don't have reliable Wi-Fi, you'll want to make sure that you download the videos ahead of time onto a flash drive or onto your desktop as a backup. All the handouts that you'll need for this training are included in the Database Decision Making workbook. Almost everything. The pre-read article is not located in your workbook because you'll send that ahead of time to your teachers. You'll find the pre-read article at this address. You'll also need access to the folder with the student mock data, which I'll talk to you about in just a second, for the Essential Function 1 activity. Let me quickly take you through the DBDM workbook. In the workbook, you'll find all the handouts that you need for the training, including the activities that are presented after each informational section in the module. You'll find the key terms, you'll find samples of various components of the module. And here is where the activities start. So you'll have handouts that are aligned with each essential function activity. This one is essential function 1 activity. 2, 3, and 4. The DBDM workbook is designed to advance the learning of the training, but it's also designed to be a really solid reference guide for teachers to use once they leave your training and try to implement DBDM in their own classrooms. They can use the workbook to take them through each step of the process. This slide explains the pre-training activities, and I'll quickly take you through them. First, you'll want to send the pre-read article and the reflection questions to participants ahead of time. As I said before, the pre-read article is found at this address, and the reflection questions are found in the notes. The reflection questions are also include the answers in italics, so you'll want to take those out ahead of time if you don't want to give your teachers the answers. Second, you'll ask participants to bring a set of data. And here are the different kinds of data that you might ask teachers to bring. You might ask them to bring an assignment, classwork, formative assessments, summative assessments, standardized assessments or scores, or student work samples. The important thing is that they have at least 10 to 20 pieces of student data that they can look through during the Essential Function 1 and Essential Function 2 activities. It's most helpful for the activities if teachers bring their own data, but mock data is provided in case they don't. You'll find that mock data in this folder, this Google Drive folder. Copy this address and paste it into our web address. This will pull up the mock student data folder, and the mock student data is organized by content and grade level. Most of it is in PDF form, and it looks. You can either provide access to this folder, internet access to this folder, or you can print pieces of data ahead of time for your participants to use. These next 3 slides are the DBDM key terms. These are the terms that are used throughout the module that will help your participants have a common understanding of the important aspects of database decision-making. These key terms are also included as the first page of the workbook, so you can decide whether or not you want to present them during the training. I am going to go ahead and skip these standard slides that are used in all of the professional learning modules. They're pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to start up again at the Session at a Glance. Session at a Glance slide provides a very basic outline of the module. You can use this slide to preview Next, you'll find both essential questions and learning targets. These are the ideas that are included in both the essential questions and the learning targets are exactly the same. It's just a matter of preference as to which one you would prefer to use, either the questions or the learning targets. They're designed to let the participants know exactly what you want them to learn once they leave this training. So they address 3 basic items. First, the steps of the database decision-making process. Second, how can database decision-making be used to improve student outcomes? And third, what are the common roadblocks and how can they be overcome? Next, you'll find a slide describing the unique approach to the database decision-making module. This module has been revised using a synthesis of common processes and concepts that are found across the vast body of DBDM literature. So it doesn't promote any one model of database decision-making. Rather, it provides a foundational umbrella that actually encompasses many different common aspects that are used across many models of database decision-making. This particular model focuses on using data to improve instruction. So throughout the model, you'll find that it really emphasizes using data to improve instruction for all students, not only those who are struggling. It promotes a commitment to deep reflection, process, and follow-through. It relies on evidence of learning or data to guide collaboration, and it accounts for common roadblocks and includes steps for overcoming them. This next slide takes you through a few benefits of DBDM for both teachers and students. Those are pretty self-explanatory, so you can go ahead and talk about those during your training on your own. This slide is optional. It's designed to help you and your participants connect aspects of the database decision-making process to what's already being done in your district or building. You can insert the district or building's vision or mission statement here, and then connect it to the database decision-making process so that it doesn't feel like database decision-making is just another thing to do. Rather, it's something that helps you accomplish the things that you are already planning to do. This is a slide that if you use it, you might want to address it at the end of the module after all the participants have gotten a good explanation of what the essential functions are. Now this next slide, the DBDM roadblock slide, this is where the introduction to the module really begins. So this module introduces the process of DBDM by anticipating the many ways this work can be derailed or stopped. Roadblocks are presented at each step of the module. So they're presented for each essential function. They're presented so that participants understand that the information that's being explained for each essential function helps them actually overcome these roadblocks. But it's a really good thing to first introduce all of the essential functions at the beginning of the module by talking about how difficult the process is and how we certainly understand all the roadblocks to it, but this type of intentional and systematic process will actually help us overcome all the roadblocks that have stopped us from moving forward with the process in the past. We've provided you with a roadblock story that can help jumpstart your own memories of how database decision-making might have been hampered in your own experience in your own classroom or in your own buildings. You can actually use this story or you can modify it as you see fit. If you modify the story, you will also want to modify these roadblocks because they go with the story. Next up is the gains graphic, and the gains graphic just outlines the gains acronym. Each essential function is aligned with a step in the gains process. It's really just an easier way to remember all 4 of the essential functions. So gather aligns with essential function 1, analyze aligns with essential function 2, intentionally act and analyze again is essential function 3. Notice and adjust is essential function 4. Systematically repeat doesn't go with an essential function, but we know, first of all, we need an S so that it would be gains. And second of all, to really do DBDM well, it's a process that must always be continually gone through. Next, we've provided the gains jingle. This, of course, is optional, but in case you want to do it, I'll go ahead and sing the tune. Gains is a system to help students achieve, gather purposeful data, and teams that believe. Analyze thoroughly, then intentionally act, design instructional plans to put kids back on track. Notice thy impact, adjust and refine, systematically repeat gains one more time.
Way to go, Sarah. That was good.
Thanks. Thanks, Bev. Next up is a slide outlining how the essential functions and the gain steps align. And now we will take a look at the gain step 1, and Bev will begin by giving us some more information.
Thank you, Sarah, so much for going over those hidden slides. Okay, we're going to take a look now at the first step in the gains process. The steps always begin by taking a look at the practice profile and the essential function, and this is just a screenshot of the practice profile. Essential function 1 and step 1 in the gains process will help participants develop a collaborative team and also help them gather informational data. This is an overview slide for the first step in the process. The overview slide describes the gain step. It also tells the actions that will be taken place in order to implement that step. And then it will also present roadblocks that the team might encounter when trying to implement those actions. Okay. Next, we see that the action is highlighted. What does collaboration look like? And then there's information that will address that particular action. Okay, next we see that a video is going to be watched by the participants. This activity is designed to really deepen the understanding about collaborative teams. So the teams will be watching this video and then they will be critiquing it. The video link is found in the notes. Okay, next, the participants need to think about what data should be used. So here again, we see it highlighted, and then we see the steps that can be taken in order to gather that informational data. This slide shows examples of the different types of data, the range of data that might be available, including formative, summative, and standardized data. Here you might want to discuss the type of data that participants brought so they can identify the type of data that they're working with. And then the next action is becoming familiar with the data. It's important to spend time with quality data, and these actions really spell out how the team can do that. Following those informational slides that you just saw, which should take about 15 minutes, there will be a team activity. The team activities usually last between 20 and 30 minutes. The participants for this activity will actually gather as data teams, and they will put those steps in place that they just learned about in step 1 of the process. They just learned about all those actions, and now it's time for them to put those actions in place. they will utilize the workbook to implement those actions that they have just learned about. Okay, there you can see the workbook. Sarah now will take us through the next step.
All right, thanks, Bev.
Thank you.
Next up, you'll see a screenshot of the practice profile for Essential Function 2. Here we have the overview slide for Essential Function 2. This is the essential function, which is analyze. These are the actions for how you can accomplish the essential function. And these are the roadblocks that might prevent teachers from actually accomplishing the essential function. Essential Function 2 provides a systematic approach for analyzing data. Using this approach may help participants to overcome the common roadblocks. In this module, a purposeful data system is presented. The purposeful data analysis system has 3 important parts, which are described next. Data meeting guidelines, a data meeting protocol, and an agenda. Next, she'll provide a little bit more information about data meeting guidelines. The important thing to note here is data meeting guidelines do not change from meeting to meeting. They are static. Here you can show sample data meeting guidelines. These are also included in your workbook. Next up is more information about a data meeting protocol. Again, the data meeting protocol will not change from meeting to meeting, and it's important to note that. It's also important to note that even though teachers usually want to skip something as formal as a protocol, it's really important to keep it in place because it's what makes the data team meeting systematic and also safe. Here's an example of a data meeting protocol. Finally, a data meeting agenda. If your participants have gone through the collaborative team module, they probably are well familiar of an agenda. An agenda, different than the meeting protocol and the meeting guidelines, actually changes from meeting to meeting because members share items that they want to add to the agenda. Again, following an agenda seems like an easy thing to do, but it's something that many data team meetings want to skip because it's so formal. It's important to resist the urge to not use the protocol or not follow the protocol because that's when the analysis breaks down and the process breaks down and the database decision-making process doesn't move forward. All of the parts of the purposeful data analysis system help teams to really dig into the data. There are many different ways to dig into the data, and usually the data is kind of what drives that approach. What the video is designed to do here is present one way to analyze student work, one way to approach analyzing that data. So you'll want to show the video, and then there are some questions that you can pose before and after to prep your participants for what to look for as they watch the video. And then these same questions will be used to reflect on what they saw during the video and how it relates to the information that they just received about data analysis. Next up is some information about identifying a common problem. Now, this is a really important part of the database decision-making process because the common problem drives what you decide to do later in terms of your instructional action plan. After you've decided on a common problem, Then you'll want to do some really difficult work of predicting a link to teacher practice. This is where the team actually thinks, okay, what are we doing that is either preventing students from learning something or maybe even directing them to wrong assumptions about what it is that they're supposed to be doing. This is a very difficult thing to do. And we have provided a sample link to teacher practice form in the database decision-making workbook, which I'll show you here. These questions help teams actually reflect on their practice to provide them with a safe environment for thinking about how student misconceptions or problems are actually linked to what it is that teachers are doing in the classroom. Again, this is a difficult thing to do, but it's such an important thing to do because it's what drives the next step, which is creating an instructional action plan to address the common problem. Here, a video is provided to help teachers reflect on how other teams have predicted a link to teacher practice. So this video is a good example of how another team has done that. You'll want to ask these questions prior to the video and then reflect on them once the video is done. Finally, participants will get a chance to practice all of the information that they have gotten access to during the last couple of slides. They will gather again as a group and they will analyze the data that they brought, that you asked them to bring before the training. You can find activity number 2 in the workbook. When participants gather, they'll work through these questions and they will get a new understanding of what's actually in their data, and they will be able to practice all the concepts that you just went through during the last explanation. All right, next up, I'm going to hand it back over to Bev to provide more information about Essential Function 3.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, now we're ready for step 3. Essential Function 3 on the practice profile can be seen on this. Here's the screenshot of the practice profile. Step 3 is really about taking action. This is the most important step. This is where the team is going to create and implement a plan. They're going to implement an instructional change. And you can see the actions that are needed here to create that plan and implement it, as well as the roadblocks that might be encountered when they get ready to do that. Okay, we've gathered and analyzed data, but we haven't done anything with it yet to really help the students. And this is the step that, if not taken, things will really fall flat. If action doesn't take place, student learning isn't going to improve. So we have to think about what actions are we going to take. Okay? What we'll have to do is create an instructional action plan. We need a very intentional way to make sure that actions take place. The instructional action plan includes 5 components: the learning goal, the evidence of learning, the instructional change, the method for examining instruction, and the impact analysis. We'll take a quick look at each of these components of the instructional action plan. The learning goal must be based on a common problem. The learning goal is important so the team has a focus on what it is they want to change. The evidence of learning is going to be what we look at to see if the new strategy that's being implemented is working. This evidence that's collected will be the new data, the impact data that we will then analyze. The third component is the instructional change itself. What will be done so that student learning will be moved forward? We will be, as a team, creating a lesson or a set of lessons using a new instructional strategy, or possibly modifying a strategy that's already in place in order to address the problem that was identified and to move student learning forward. The fourth component of the instructional action plan is deciding on a method for examining instruction. How are we going to reflect on that instructional action that was put into place? There are a number of different ways to do this. It could be a lesson study, instructional rounds, video, one's own teaching and reflecting on it, or a number of other ways. So a method that best fits the needs of the team will be determined. The fourth component is the impact analysis, deciding how to analyze the impact of the change that was just implemented. So those are the 5 components of the instructional action plan. With the impact analysis, this gives the team that second set of data that they're going to use to analyze to see whether or not their instructional change worked. So actually, the team will be using 2 sets of data during this process. That initial data where the problem is being identified, and then the impact data to reflect on the instructional change to see whether or not it was successful, and if so, how powerful that change was. Now, you'll finally get to do something for the kids. You're really going to be moving them forward by following the plan. In order to follow the plan with fidelity, you have to be very systematic and intentional. It might be helpful to pair up with somebody as a coach within your team so that the plan becomes implemented the way that it was supposed to be. The activity that follows, the informational slides for Essential Function 3, will provide the participants a chance to get up and move around, because this will actually be a station activity. There will be 4 different videos available. Each of those videos illustrates one method for examining instruction. Participants will view the videos using a reflection sheet that has a number of questions posed for them to think about as they're watching the videos, and then to discuss after viewing the videos. There is a stay and stray activity structure that's described in the notes that can be used as well. Participants will get to learn about each of these 4 different ways for examining instruction, and then they'll get to have a debriefing and share out discussion following the viewing of the videos. Next, Sarah is going to take us through the last step of the gains process, step 4.
Thanks, Bev.
Thank you.
This is a screenshot of the Database Decision-Making Practice Profile, Essential Function 4. Here is Essential Function 4. This is how you can accomplish Essential Function 4. And here are some roadblocks that may prevent teachers from actually accomplishing the Essential Function 4 actions. Essential Function 4 provides a systematic approach for reflecting on whether or not the instructional change worked. This approach may help participants overcome the common roadblocks. After implementing the instructional change, after teachers have chosen their method for examining instruction and actually implemented the plan, now they will want to analyze their impact data. And they will want to do this by using the data analysis system that they created during Essential Function 2. They're going to want to schedule more meetings to analyze the data and discover what impact their instructional change actually had. Step 4 is a really important part of the process, and it can sometimes be overlooked because it's about meeting more, and that takes time. But this is the part where you really get to sit down with your team and discover what worked and what didn't work when you implemented your instructional change. This is what gives you that important data. This is what makes all of the steps. This is the benefit of actually doing all of the steps ahead of this one. Here you get to discover, did the instructional change that we implemented actually help students? Did it move them forward? If it didn't, why? And if it did, why? One important way to gauge instructional impact is to bring students in on the process. Here are some ideas for how to do that. Finally, you'll want to celebrate making your way through an entire cycle. This is whether it worked or not. It's still important to celebrate because moving through an entire database decision-making process gives you so much rich information about your instruction and rich information about what students are really learning that it's important to celebrate making it through something that is so incredibly difficult. If your instructional change worked the way you wanted it, you'll pick a new set of data and start completely over. Hopefully, the next time you do database decision making with a second set of data, it's going to be easy and even more impactful. If not, your team may decide to simply adjust the instructional change that they implemented, gather more impact data, and gain more insight about what worked and what didn't, all the while with a goal of moving students forward. Remind participants that you can be available to help them through this process because it's always easier with some coaching, and you can also give them some direction for how to set up some peer coaching models. For the Essential Function 4 activity, which is right here in the workbook, participants will think through how they will implement database decision-making once they leave the training. So this is just a planning document that they will use to think about, okay, how are we going to do this once we leave? You may want to summarize the gains cycle again, or even sing the jingle. Thank you so much for watching the Database Decision Making Rollout webinar with us. Bev and I are planning on having office hours, virtual office hours on Friday, February 15th from 9 to 12. We will send out a Zoom link, and if you have questions or just points that you'd like to discuss about the Database Decision Making module, we'll be just sitting there waiting for you from 9 to 12 on Friday, February 15th. So be looking for an email with that Zoom link and some more details. Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks so much for joining this webinar and finding ways to help educators improve instructional practices so students can make academic gains. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Signing off.